was living a lie. In the darkness, I was scared of the light. With no direction, I was running away. Step by side, enjoy the ride. Enjoy the ride.
All right. So the first question I have here is, how many here in your little groups had a sense that the roles that were being played, based on how far gone the relationship was, there probably wasn't much hope? Anybody feel like that as a facilitator? Like, what am I really?
There's no hope in a couple.
What's that?
Yeah, you guys were done.
That couple seemed like it just was a roller. It was round and round, round and round. Definitely would have been mediating or facilitating for a while.
Okay.
Seemed like a pretty long process.
Yeah. Okay. How about in your role play groups? Anybody have a couple that was pretty far gone that weren't sure that they were going to survive?
I went through two.
I want to hear it. Come on, we want to hear it.
I went through two partners. I apparently destroyed the pseudo version of the real person, but there's no trust in our relationship whatsoever. And I'm a lot stronger personality than my fiance, who just does whatever I tell her to do. Correct?
Correct.
I'm a lot more strong. I push you around a little bit, not like literally, but my personality is stronger. And you just kind of do what I want you to do.
You think?
Is that the facilitator?
My fiance. We were the facilitators.
Oh, gotcha.
So I'm saying that the relationship's not going anywhere because, and the irony. Oops. See, she's modeling it right now.
Just keep the mic.
The irony of it is that I'm the one. This is kind of an interesting twist. I'm the one that's overbearing and the most insecure. So I think that she is cheating on me. And me. And she's cheating on me too. This is actually interesting. So this is actually interesting, and I'm being actually serious here. I was reading something yesterday. I'm actually in this compassion group with the Jewish community called Musa, which is about personality traits. And we were studying humility yesterday. And what was interesting, and I knew the answer to this, is that sometimes the most arrogant person is actually the most, they think they're the most humble because they have no self-esteem, but they come across to the outside world as just really difficult. So I felt that in the role that I was playing, that I was, I was being very victim-like, and I was really being difficult, and she was speechless, basically. Didn't know what to say, right? Did you really like me?
Yes, I did.
But she dare not say anything else.
What did you want to bring me to the bowling league, right?
Yes, and you didn't want to come with me
Why is that?
because I didn't pay. because you had to pay for it all.
And because I don't know how to bowl. I mean, we had a lot of fun with it, but there were a lot of stuff that,
Well, I mean, I'll make a pitch for the brainstorming part of that 10-step deal. Some of these logistical challenges as far as coming to agreements can just can be a result of just a lack of options that have been put on the table. I mean, so it's this or this, and this is mine, and this is yours, and they're going to fight. You know, I mean, if we put 10 options on the table, then you don't have that this is mine and this is yours dynamic. You now have us and a lot of options. And it just realigns the whole discussion. But did you guys feel like there were some good things that happened in your little role play?
Yeah, we figured out the why she didn't want to go bowling with me, and I think we got that solved, and now she's willing to go bowling with me.
Wow.
And in public.
In
yes.
public, yeah. It's great.
I don't know why you want to go out with me though. Wasn't very nice.
Because you're really good looking.
That's what it was. She told me that I was the best looking person. Yeah.
All right. Any other groups? Other groups?
I did come out in the conversation.
How did your guys' thing turn out over here? You guys had some questions along the way. Give us a report on your session.
Well, I was wondering how far the facilitator goes. And when we finally talked to Bob, he said that they can go back and forth and they can talk about their feelings and their, their wishes or whatever. But if they go outside the boundaries of what they're supposed to be discussing, then we rein them in.
Mm-hmm.
So I should have known that apparently. but I'm good with it, and now I know.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's not necessarily intuitive. And as I described it, like a hockey game, that the puck can, the ref does not determine where the puck gets shot or hit to within the boards, right? But if it goes out, play stops, and you got to go get the thing and put it back in the boards, back on the ice. And there's some rules about offsides, and the refs interject so that the game can go forward smoothly. And the same thing with the facilitator. Bad refs, and I was a referee for years for soccer, USTA and USA Cup, and the rule that we always talked about with new refs, and how do you do this job, and you got to know all the rules. One of the rules was that, and we look at NFL games and stuff, and the rule is that a referee should never determine the outcome of a game. Okay, that should be between the teams. They have to determine the outcome. Right?
That's like a very interesting point, because I remember one time I used to referee lacrosse, and one time I made a call that impacted if it was a goal or not, rather than just saying oh, that was a goal or that wasn't a goal. Mm. And the fact that I was involved was awkward, and that's an interesting analogy to this type of thing. If you have any sway in the manipulating the decisions or what
Yep.
outcomes are, and so I really appreciate that analogy.
Yeah.
So
that rule applies in a lot of areas similar to this too. Mediation's the same thing. You are not supposed to have a stake or have an influence in whether they reach an agreement or not. Okay, you're there to facilitate a process. The process is what you're responsible for, not the outcome. And that's a hard concept sometimes for folks to kind of differentiate that. But it's a boundary skill to kind of understand where that line is. And that was a very good question. I mean, where is the line as far as your role? And that's different even from, there's some similarities to a therapist, but it's not exactly the same. What would you say? Would you say some different roles here for a therapist than a facilitator in this process?
Probably a little bit different. A little bit. Sometimes as a therapist, I was telling Dawn, you have to step in, and sometimes you have to put your thumb on somebody, calling them out, and you risk the relationship. But if it's strong and they take it, then it moves on. Mm-hmm. It sails forward, because there's just sometimes people are so out of bounds.
Yep.
That you have to call a spade, so to speak, where you probably wouldn't do it in your position.
Right.
But
well, our relationship isn't long term like a therapist. we're there to create a process, and it has a beginning and an end, and so that changes the game.
Well, and you have to have a relationship for people to hear you, really. You know, that's the aspect, and so you kind of weigh that out. You're always kind of weighing that out. How do you get them to see that? So you're probably just a little bit more removed than you are as a therapist, but you still don't own the decision. I always give it to them. I want them to be in power. Most people who come to you have been controlled. So I always tell them, you're safe with me. You're always in control. And so maybe just let people know that.
Yeah.
That they're safe. They're the ones making the decisions. You're not. You're always in control. So
I think the self-awareness factor is important. I mean, it's kind of relates to that, but there are times as as a facilitator, if I'm caucused with a party, then the other one's not in the room. There's things that I can say that maybe put my thumb on something, but but the other party's not hearing it, so then they're not worried about, oh, they're going to use that against me now. But that can be one reason to caucus or to separate them and have some time with each of them too, if you need to kind of talk openly more about some issues.
And also when you're working with people, I found out, I throw up different things on the board, but trauma, I do a love-dependent, love-avoidant quadrant. But some people are love-dependent, and if you don't get what you need, you're the B word. You're controlling, you're angry, you're trying to force people to connect with you, or you're more passive and become manipulative. I need you to fix my toilet. To get them. On the other side is kind of the FU side. I don't care what, I'm going to do whatever I want. Or I'm depressed and withdrawn. And I found most of those people, I used to think people just, been in relationships and there's too much fine print, so they're distancing. But I found most of these people have been traumatized. And they're not there. And so that trauma just reworks the brain. So when you're working against that, it's not you and it's not them. It's just that they've been traumatized, and everything in them tells them to defend themselves. And an example of this, if you've ever gone to the Guthrie and walked over the tongue where there's a glass in the floor, have you done that by the Mississippi River, the Guthrie Theater? Well, anyway, they've got this big square piece of glass, and you look down of like 3 floors. My wife is a wimp. If you go up in a ski lift or anything like that, and you say, look around, drive in the mountains, drive over a bridge, I go, look at that vista. She goes, I'm looking straight ahead. When it came to that glass, you walked over it like just a champ. I just walked up to it, and I went like this. I just couldn't do it. I looked down there. I knew it was safe, but my body would not let me go. And that's what happens with people. Sometimes it's like walking over that glass. My wife could just walk right over it. Everything in me cognitively said, it's safe, but everything in my emotions said, no. So I think you're going to reach people like that, and it's not something they're trying, but it's almost just this knee-jerk reaction, primal scream, so to speak, in their body. Does that make a little sense? So you'll reach that, and all you can do is just listen.
Yep. And I think that's partly the reason behind the last facilitator we watched, just his soft tone. It's hard to know at what points you're dealing with the results of trauma or just stubbornness, or which is it? You don't know. And so you're best to just approach it just tactfully, calmly, patiently. You don't push. Okay, if somebody says, oh, it's fine, and they push, that's not going to help. It's not helpful help. It's okay, let's talk about this, what's going on. So there is a mode for a facilitator that doesn't take responsibility for some of those choices and when they should happen. The parties have to be, I always say, nobody's got my schedule for personal growth. Okay, and I don't have anybody else's.
And I just think that relaxed look,
Yeah.
and I think women especially have a relaxed look that can work that guys don't have, of a smile or just that look can really tone down people. You know, you don't have to be a giddy smile, but just that smile that, you know, I'm relaxed and this is going to work out. It's a real calming thing.
A kind of a question. You addressed that at the end of the video. You know, he mentioned some things to work on. Are there any little things that you kind of look at as a success indicator? What are some of the little things that you look for that you can point out and, you know, you get 3 weeks into it and are going, there is, you know, either, hey, there's a little hope or whatever. Are there little pieces?
He brought up one here. It was kind of subtle, and it went by fast. But I don't know if you noticed, the first time that Bill tried to do active listening, he was just all over the map. But you even know what it's like to live with you. I mean, okay. But the second round, he identified her wish and her feeling pretty quickly. And that would be something that I would point out. I'd say, Bill, did you notice how you were able to describe what she wished for and how she felt? You know, you nailed it. You know, good job. I mean, you know, that's, and it may seem small, but it's huge. I mean, the relearning of how to communicate, we take this for granted. I mean, we don't think about how we talk to people. But the relearning of that is a big, tall order.
I'm probably asking a question that's off the schedule or not part of the curriculum. It made me think, because this is not therapy, it's communication. Could this be used, I mean, not all categories, because to do with maybe an estranged relationship between a father and a daughter who's able to make an informed decision, like a teenager, where there's been a divorce and separation. Do you see what I'm saying? There just seem to be a lot of tools in this. Obviously, there's some scales that you wouldn't use.
Yeah.
But could it?
I think so. I think that the toolbox is really ideal for any relationship where there's been estrangement. If both parties are wanting to work at reconnecting. In fact, if there's been a time where there's been no communication, they're almost at an advantage because, you know, they're not trying to change something that's already in motion. They're starting new, right? And there would be an opportunity there to do it different. So no, I think it would be, you know, have a very appropriate application in a lot of contexts. My daughter and I, my younger daughter and I went through a period of time where 10 months of shutdown communication, and one of the most painful things I'd been through my adult life. My wife took it better. I don't know if it's something about dads, you know, and daughters, but I learned a lot through that. And I wasn't expecting that, but I learned a lot just from being aware of my own emotions. But the allowing for her to be ready to kind of take a step back, but without her knowing it, I was using a lot of the stuff that I know about in this process to facilitate a path back for her. And for me to, you know, as a dad, not just rest on what I always did and the way I talk to my kids, but to go, okay, this is, you know, the way we talk to each other is going to need to be different because obviously the way we were doing it before resulted in something that wasn't what either of us wanted. So in a way, I've personally applied some of this stuff in my own family life. today, whereas our relationship is as good as ever, better than ever. And so that's cool. We're expecting that personal disclosure. Yeah.
So Lori brought up the fact that we were having a difficult time melding the circle stuff that we've been learning for the last 3 weeks and what you're teaching us, and how long do you go back and forth, and do you just go back and forth? I'd like a few more details just to understand. Do we go back and forth twice, 3 times? Do we ask about feelings more often? Some of those logistics.
This material, this toolbox is designed for a more defined process where you go 1, 2, 3 and done. So if you have a topic, that straight talk sheet kind of maps out the process. There's, how do I feel? What do I think? What do I want? Is there anything we both want? And you get to an end point, and you've accomplished something. You've accomplished a plan that you both have buy-in to, that you're willing to try. If it doesn't work, it's nobody's fault, but you go back and maybe try something else. The circle thing, I'm not trained in that, but what I gather from what some of you shared and what Michelle has shared with me about it, that it's more open-ended. Because you have multiple participants, it has to be more. It has to be less structure in it, and more of a consensus process than a structured linear process. I mean, would you agree with that? If you've been through both here, but they each have their own, strengths and advantages. I think. I think when couples are in a high level of conflict and distress, sometimes there's limited energy available for working on change. And so when that's the case, and this comes from my work in mediation as well, there are some cases where they've only got enough energy to stay in the room with the person for an hour and a half, and if it's not done by then, they're out of there, just because they're that raw. And so, choosing the process that fits the need, that fits the ability of the participants would probably be something we could do in another workshop on. But I mean, I don't know. I'd be interested to hear what you guys have to say that have kind of sat through both now, maybe in how each would be used best or different contexts. If anybody has some thoughts.
There's 2 purposes, though. And, we talked about that a little bit. The purpose of this is, I see teaching communication. Mm-hmm. Teaching a process and a way to move forward, where whether it's counseling or whether it's, a circle process is getting to the root of the problem and making sure the person has enough time to talk. When you're teaching and when you're learning, you get tired. Mm-hmm. Where when you're just having the opportunity to talk and be heard, there's different emotional energy, there's different anything. So I think I'm with you. After an hour and a half of learning, mm-hmm. it would be exhausting.
Yeah.
So, yeah, absolutely. I recognize this is a different process, so it's okay. It is a different process, though, because we actually do not want things to be brief and to the point. We want to allow that person to speak as long as they want to speak. And when they're done, then we go to the person that's been listening and ask them, what did you hear them say? What I see overall is this might be a quicker process than the circle process that we've been taught through Family Innocence. The other thing that I see is, this process recognizes the feelings where we don't really recognize them intentionally. Usually the mediations or circles I've sat in so far that I've been able to sit in through family innocence, it seems like the couple, or it could be, there's not just couples, but that they find that themselves are on their own. They get to this place. It's a process. It's a long process, a longer process to get to that point, but I have seen it right before my eyes, that they see that and recognize that themselves. There's that connection that's happening over. Could be 2 hours, 3 hours, we eventually get to that place. They're connecting. They're connecting not just here but here, and they find that on their own through communication. And it's that dialogue and it's that process, which is longer. But they usually get there on their own. Again, we're just facilitating, and it's back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And but they usually come to terms with that and understand each other after some time. We almost we're allowing them to get to that. We're facilitating, but they're getting to that place through our facilitating and that process, and it could be long. I mean, I've been on 4 hours for sure before, and one time doing a circle was 4 hours long, and it was beautiful. I've seen restorations happen right before my face, but it is probably a longer process. Anybody else want to add to?
I'm curious. I was reading over the materials this morning before we started for restorative circles, and that last little bit, once we've established some kind of communication and just before lawyers write something up, there's that little bit where a plan is coming together, and I'm asking because I have no idea the answer. Does this 10-step sort of brainstorming process, maybe you can introduce that to the couple and they can figure out their solution better. If they're communicating and they just have different ideas, does it fit together?
This is the question.
Does it make sense to use the 10-step process for finding new solutions between the couple after they've come to the point where they can communicate? When we're just before, you're going to set this solution down on paper for them, if there's one more issue to figure out, is that a good method?
I was thinking mediation. Who is mediation developed for and around? Lawyers. So they're solving it. This is more feelings, and so you can I think you can hybrid things, because that's why God's given you a certain amount of wisdom. Is there might be, how about trying this? And I think, why not? Because you get that. And I was also thinking, when you get people in, they've been so used to fighting. They've had 10 years, 20 years of anger. So if you can get them to visualize, what would it be like if you guys could just get along and share your kids? I mean, what would that feel like?
Yeah.
If you can get them just past this constant fight, because it is anxious, it is anxiety producing, and it's real. So if you can try and somehow just move them a little bit to get a glimpse, and then and give them praise for just coming in. It takes a lot of courage to come in here. You guys care about your kids, obviously, and there's some level that you care about your relationship, or you wouldn't be here. And so just identify some character qualities in them, and then go forward the best you can. There's no magic answer.
Yeah.
But just remember, they've been fighting.
Yeah. I think the type of process used is going to be affected by just some of the realities of timing. As a mediator, we're used to working with situations where there is a deadline. If they don't have an answer by this date, it's going to get thrown to a judge, and there's going to be a trial. And the cost of that is, now there's some ability to extend that or reschedule that if there's some progress being made. But there's some things like, where are the kids going to live that the kids need to have that settled, okay? just for their own well-being. And so there is a timing, and if it's something's already in the court system, then there's already some metrics that have to be met as far as meeting the standards of the statute, or it's not going to be allowed to stand by the court. Okay, so when lawyers are drafting stuff up or a mediator's putting some agreements down, having an awareness of what's going to be accepted and what's not is kind of important to the parties, so they don't have to go through another process to get to the end of this, maybe even at the risk of the one they just did getting unraveled. So I mean, there are some factors as far as what process is appropriate and helpful. But I think that the more we have on our in our scope here of options that we're aware of, I think then we can provide direction on that if need be. But I think that's something that I think there are a lot of common elements in both the circles and in this. Just the piece of noticing progress, encouraging, creating space for communication to happen differently. I mean, there's just some principles that apply in both. But I definitely would say that it's more of a traditional structure that this is fit into than the circles thing. And what works best. So, you're going to say something else?
Probably this isn't a good time to ask, but do people really need a lawyer? Can they just go before if they agree that this is what we're doing and have a judge sign it? Because there's so many costs once people get into it.
That's a good question, and there is an answer to that, practically speaking. The answer is, once either party in the marriage has given jurisdiction to the court over their marriage and their family, there's no reversing that. That's a key point. Okay. When either party files, not when they serve papers, but when they file those papers, they lose control. The whole family loses control over the destiny of the family. The court has the final say of what goes and what doesn't, and what's allowed and what isn't, and what's in the best interest of the kids, and what's fair for the parents. I mean, all of it then is handed over to the court system, and there is no going back once that happens. The court will not release jurisdiction of a divorce once it's got it.
It's pretty amazing, isn't it?
It's interesting to know that. I mean, people don't realize that when they go to file these papers. They're changing the rules.
So if they don't file the papers and they work them out among themselves and then go to the judge, then they're in control?
No, when they go to the judge, they're not.
Well, how do you get a divorce?
You don't.
You can go up, do all those things.
You can't get a legal divorce without the court. And so you can't,
So
get
once you do
married
that-
without the judge, without the courts. That's what's so screwed up about this system.
So once you get divorced, you're automatically under the jurisdiction of the court, no matter how you do it.
Yes. If you want the legal freedom to end the marital estate that you created, whether knowingly or unknowingly, when you got married, you have to. You're requiring the court's action.
Now I know why some people don't get divorced. I mean,
Or don't get
Or get married.
yeah.
Right.
Right.
And I've told this to Christians, and they're like, "What?" They're horrified. What, are you against marriage too? Right? But I'm like, you know what? The state of Minnesota does not care about your concept of covenant marriage. It is completely foreign to them. This animal they call marriage now has nothing to do with your Christian faith. So don't think that that's what it is. It's not. So, I mean, at the same time, the only thing that's parallel now is that what we do in church and have a covenant and whatever, and there's a spiritual aspect of it. There's still value in establishing a marital estate, because even though it's the court treats it like a company, like a corporation. And all they care about is if you don't want the corporation anymore, we have to divvy up the assets and go on. That's how marriage is treated now by the court systems. It has no concept of covenant or value in relationships or any of that stuff. It's about stuff and do you need to divide the marital estate? So, it has, Minnesota's done this as far as the relational part of marriage, along with a lot of other things that we had moral concerns about. But
however, if you went and you decided that you would just share the kids, you'd divide them half and half, and you'd figure it out. You could just put that in the. You can do whatever
you want as long as. But once you give it to a judge, then the court has control, and they could look at it and go, no, this is not legal. You can't do this, and here's what we have to do.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks.
So if you have a couple who wants to get a divorce, they file papers, they're on their way, but they've been through mediations 3 times, is there a way that the two of them, the husband and wife, can file amicable paperwork, make their own decisions on their divisions, take it to the court, get rid of their attorneys, and ask the judge to bless that?
Yeah, but they're under the same standards as if the attorney would have submitted it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of the same question he asked.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a practical issue if you don't have an attorney and you're asking the judge to, you're asking the judge to drop the divorce papers. Many judges have never practiced family law, so they don't actually know how to draw up the divorce papers. And I have that issue ongoing right now with a case where we went to trial and the judge screwed up dividing the pension. And I've been spending the last year trying to fix what the judge screwed up because the judge didn't know how to divide the pension. So you're asking, do you need a lawyer? Well, you may need a lawyer just to get the wording right.
Yeah, that's the main drawback of not using an attorney. You don't know what you don't know, and if you give it to the judge and the judge says you can't do this, the judge can't. They can tell you no, but they won't do it for you right. They won't put it together like you want it, but they'll tell you what you can't do. Okay, and I have a lot of pro se parties that have tried to file their paperwork and it got thrown back at them, and they're like, well, I don't know now what this is. We wrote down what we wanted, but they won't sign it. And so, that's where, a lawyer by ethically is bound to do it up the way you want it, okay, within the law. So I wouldn't see a problem. Lawyers aren't the problem unless they are getting too much involved in telling you what to do. A lawyer who really is serving their client should be a wonderful asset in putting that together and finishing it and getting it done. But
So many times I hear lawyers aren't calling them back, they're not doing anything, they're not really advocating. I hear a lot of, it seems like a business with once you pay, you're lucky to get a call back when you need one. So I'm not saying all
it's not ethical either. Yeah.
Put your other hat on, because you don't do that, do you? You're an attorney.
That'd be unethical to not call your client back, goodness sakes. You reported the lawyer's board.
I'm siding with you as well.
What? You see it too?
You go ahead.
I will say, having tried to do one lawyer divorces where we would have a couple come in, wanted a divorce, said they know what they wanted to do, we could write it up for them, we would do it for a minimal fee, then they could go in front of a judge and do it. But we are required by law, because it is an adversarial system, that we can only represent one party.
Yes.
And we have to advise the other party that you have a right to go to another lawyer.
Yes.
And as soon as you go to another family law lawyer, I can get you more.
Kaboom, yeah.
And now it's on. And we did a number of cases where we were doing this sort of representation and ended up doing this sort of representation because somebody did what they have every legal right to do.
And might even have an ethical obligation to do if it came down to it.
And sometimes when people negotiate a really bad agreement in front of them and you've promised to write them up, do I have a legal obligation to go, you're getting screwed? No, I can't. I'm only allowed to represent one party. And it's one of the reasons it was a dangerous thing for us to do.
Right. Yeah. Yep. And then another lawyer looks at it and all of a sudden they're attacking you because of that. Right? These are all reasons why the whole area of family law, particularly the parenting and custody stuff, needs to get out of the court system altogether. It was never designed for this in the first place. Never. Divorce was so rare back when these laws were created that nobody imagined that half of all marriages would end in divorce, and that half of other couples would have kids without getting married. So now you got paternity issues, property ownership issues, custody, parenting time issues that are already magically necessary because these people are having kids without even having a permanent deal. And so it's a mess. But family relational decisions with parents and kids the courts were never designed to handle that stuff. It's a bull in a china shop. And the whole thing needs to be put into an administrative process, if anything, and just avoid the courts completely. And I mean, I've been pounding on that for a long time, and I think that the E&E process that we've been doing now for several years is a model that could completely replace because people sit down and they sit down and they work it out with the help of some people who've been through it a few times, and they own the result. They own the agreement in the end, and they live with it, and they know they can come back and tweak it. But it's a respectful, ordered process that helps dysfunctional parents find a way to co-parent, at least in a way that's respectful and helpful for the kids. So I mean, all of this is supporting the premise that the court system has always been the wrong place to resolve these questions and issues. It's not the best forum. But anyway, I'm preaching. Sorry.
That's all right. I just when you said the state of Minnesota's just kind of gone, well, isn't that pretty much kind of everywhere right now? As far as again, like other states, it seems to me, that and like you said, the ethical piece. I've been to an unethical lawyer in a whole different strata. I wasn't able to have children, love children, and I've seen it. And if a lawyer isn't ethical, a lot of people are in trouble, And I think I have friends, lots of people I know who are lawyers who are just friends of mine too.
Yeah.
And they're fabulous people, and so many are really ethical, like any So that's
they don't
all
make the news.
What's
The ethical ones don't make the news.
Right.
So it's just like any profession, right? I mean, yeah.
Thank you.
Is Tennessee like this?
Tennessee is like this. What I have experienced in working with people with attorneys is as soon as you have attorneys on board and they see how much money you have, or they see that the sale of your house is going to net you a certain amount of money, every penny of that's gone, and then they settle. They don't want to settle before that. They want to wait till they get all that money, and it infuriates me. It makes me sick. It's just totally wrong. And of course, there's good attorneys and bad attorneys. There's good doctors and bad doctors. There's ethical people and unethical people. It's just the way it is.
And we're going to see that in every state of the union.
Yeah, every state.
It's human. It's a human problem.
It's a human problem. Yep.
There has to be a better way than what the courts are doing with their families.
How can I be okay even if you don't change?
She could not say anything negative about me.
And I believe family court will be abolished.
That bike is sexy. was living a lie. In the darkness I was scared of the light. With no direction I was running away. I tried to cover that I'm losing my mind. Chapter, why not give it a try? This hopeful journey needs an open mind to discover the treasure inside. Never see the truth until you look past the lies. Mother Nature is waiting for you to arrive. Step outside, step outside, enjoy the ride. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Do-do-do-do-do.
So Michelle is going to leave us with the Family Innocence theme song. We know it's going to be catching on everywhere. So take it away, Michelle.
And I won't have my husband Tom sing with me this time.
Or me.
You guys are all blessed.
Okay. Camera. Start spreading the bird, beginning today. We want to be no part of it, the family court. The bird is the word. It's flying away to make a brand new start of it. No family court. We want to wake up in a household where we can sleep instead of fearing a judge ready to peep. These family court blows are melting away. We will get to the heart of it with no delay. If we can do it here, we'll do it everywhere. No family court, no family court. One more line. If it is not a crime, we are not doing time in family court. No family court.